Can you imagine this? A tax policy that doesn't just make the public sweat over their tax bills but also drags them into an endless sea of lawsuits. Instead of receiving a light tax gift from the government, the American people find themselves caught in a legal game where the only winners aren't the citizens, but the lawyers who are getting rich off every single lawsuit. Yes, you heard that right. Trump's tax policy isn't just about how much you pay, but how many legal battles you can endure. So what makes Trump's tax policy so special? The answer is simple: it's all about giving huge tax cuts to the rich and giant corporations, while the middle class and lower income earners get stuck with a heavier tax burden. The more you earn, the more you pay, and in this case, that's more taxes, not less. But here's the kicker: this policy doesn't just have regular people paying higher taxes, it throws them into an ongoing legal battle with no end in sight. The lawyers? Oh, they're absolutely thrilled because they get a new batch of clients every time Trump makes a tax move. Did Trump think this would save the economy? Maybe he did. But the reality is, this tax policy has only lengthened the legal struggle that citizens are now forced to engage in, leaving the already financially strained population even worse off. Who needs a tax policy where every change comes with a lawsuit? That's the reality we're living in for 2025. So, can Trump overcome these lawsuits and continue implementing his tax policy, or will he eventually be forced to bow out under the relentless pressure of never-ending litigation? Let's dive into that and explore what's really going on with this 2025 tax plan and why it's making waves in the courtroom instead of the economy. Trump's 2025 tax policy has officially been launched, and it's safe to say that this is one of the most controversial tax policies in American history. So, what makes it so special? Well, it's pretty simple. The policy mainly aims to lower taxes for big corporations and wealthy investors. But what's the ultimate goal here? To supposedly boost the economy, according to Trump. However, let's take a look at the reality. This policy forces the poor and middle class to bear a heavier tax burden, while the rich get richer. That's one of the main reasons why Trump's tax policy has sparked so much outrage within the community. Trump probably thought that lowering taxes for the wealthy would help stimulate the economy by encouraging more investments. But the result? It didn't quite go as he expected. Instead of creating fairness in the distribution of wealth, this tax policy only increased inequality, as lower-income people are now paying higher taxes to cover for the tax cuts that businesses and the rich are enjoying. And that led to an unexpected consequence: a wave of lawsuits has erupted from the people who are dissatisfied with this tax policy. Think of it like a cake, where half of the big cake is given to big corporations and the rich, and the remaining half is barely enough to serve the poor and middle class. Every time the cake is cut, the portion for the poor gets smaller, while the portion for the rich just keeps getting bigger. And of course, they're not just getting a larger portion of the cake, they're also getting the amazing tax breaks that come with this policy. Of course, Trump isn't the only one who supports this policy. His allies have been rallying behind it, claiming that it will bring prosperity to the economy. But if you look at the numbers, not everyone agrees with them. Those opposing the policy argue that it only serves a small group of rich people, while the majority of the population has to endure the massive tax burdens. Now, it's not just a handful of lawyers or a single court dealing with Trump's controversial tax policy. In fact, states across the country have jumped into the fray, trying to get their own piece of the legal action, with state courts fighting to sue Trump's administration over the tax plan. It's like a battle royale, but instead of fists, it's lawsuits flying in every direction. Every state wants a chance to make their case against the tax policy and to stand as the hero for their citizens. Take New York, for example. One of the first states to step into the ring, New York has made it clear that they're not backing down. They argue that the tax policy unfairly targets their residents, especially when it comes to the SALT deduction, a tax break that primarily benefits the wealthy. Trump's tax plan capping the state and local tax deductions at $10,000 is seen as a direct blow to residents in high-tax states like New York. So, New York lawyers were quick to file a lawsuit, hoping to block the policy and protect their residents from what they call an unfair tax burden. And, of course, New York isn't alone in this fight. California is right there in the mix, charging headfirst into legal battle after legal battle. The Golden State, known for its massive wealth disparity, sees this policy as yet another slap in the face to the working class. California state officials argue that Trump's tax policy hits them hardest with its reduction of certain deductions, leaving the state with less money to fund essential public services. California's legal teams have already been in court fighting for their people, and just like New York, they're hoping to prove that Trump's plan is unconstitutional and goes against the interests of their citizens. And it doesn't stop there. Other states like Connecticut, New Jersey, and Illinois have also thrown their hats into the ring. Every time Trump makes a move with his tax policy, it feels like a new lawsuit is filed in another state. It's like a domino effect, each state filing suit one after the other, trying to outdo the others to be the one that gets to put a stop to what they see as an unfair policy. These states argue that the new tax policies disproportionately affect their residents, especially in the areas of education and healthcare, where the funds are being stretched thin. In fact, it's become almost a competition at this point, which state can prove it has been most harmed by Trump's tax changes. It's no longer just about a policy or its effects, it's about which state gets to claim victory and be the one that forces a change on a national level. Every time one state files a suit, another follows suit, and so the legal battle intensifies. Why do so many states feel the need to get involved in these lawsuits? Is it because they genuinely believe their citizens are being harmed, or is there something more at play? Some would argue that states are positioning themselves as defenders of their people, standing up against what they see as federal overreach. But others would say it's about political posturing, a way for states with opposing views to challenge Trump's policies and rally their base. After all, this battle isn't just legal, it's deeply political. Now, with so many different courts handling these lawsuits, the confusion and complexity are piling up. Each state brings its own argument, its own set of legal precedents, and its own set of public interests into the ring. The result? A legal tangle that will take years to untangle, with no clear winner in sight. And while these legal battles rage on, Trump's tax policy continues to be scrutinized on a national scale. But the courts, especially those in these states, have become an essential battleground in determining whether Trump's tax policies will stand or fall. As state courts across the country fight for the chance to challenge Trump's tax plan, the question remains, who will win this multi-state legal battle? One of the most interesting things about Trump's tax policy is how it has led to a storm of lawsuits. Yes, every time this tax policy gets implemented, people find themselves heading straight for the courts as if it's an unavoidable part of their daily lives. And these aren't just small claims, these are massive legal battles where those affected by the tax policy rise up to sue Trump and the government. So why are there so many lawsuits? The answer is simple: Trump's tax policy is unfair. Lower and middle-income people feel they're bearing an unfair share of the tax burden, while giant corporations and the wealthy get tax cuts and benefits that are beyond imagination. So, to address this, many people have decided to take the government to court, demanding that they reconsider the policy. One of the most noteworthy lawsuits came when major states like New York and California decided to sue the Trump administration, arguing that his tax policy harms the interests of their citizens. They claimed that the policy creates social inequality, where the poor are paying higher taxes while big corporations and the wealthy benefit from huge tax breaks. And of course, lawyers couldn't pass up the opportunity, knowing that this lawsuit would drag on for months, possibly years, and give them a chance to make a lot of money. And naturally, the courts have welcomed these lawsuits with open arms. In reality, these lawsuits aren't just a legal challenge, they're also a test of how Trump will face pressure from the community and politicians. If Trump can't overcome these lawsuits, his tax policy might be delayed, or even overturned completely. But will Trump win these lawsuits? That's still a big question, as courts in the US are always full of surprises. I don't think Trump could have predicted that his tax policy would create such a storm of lawsuits. When he announced the tax plan, he probably thought he was doing the right thing for the economy. But the outcome? A totally different story. Raising taxes didn't just give the poor and middle class headaches, it also created a whole new legal industry, the tax lawsuit industry. Lawyers and law firms quickly realized the opportunity to make money off of this tax policy and started focusing on suing the government. And of course, they've made quite a bit of money from these lawsuits. Trump surely didn't expect that raising taxes would create such a strong wave of lawsuits. And he might have thought that these lawsuits were just small issues that didn't deserve much attention. But in reality, these lawsuits have become legal nightmares for him. Every lawsuit is a risk for his tax policy, and if not handled properly, these lawsuits could destroy the whole tax plan that he worked so hard to build. And once a lawsuit starts, lawyers aren't backing down easily. They'll fight until the end to get a ruling in favor of their clients. This means that each lawsuit will drag on for a long time, and Trump will face a never-ending legal battle. What's strange is that the real winners of these lawsuits aren't the politicians or the citizens, it's the lawyers. They'll keep making money off of every lawsuit, making this legal war a long and drawn-out race. As you can see, not everyone is happy with this tax policy. Some people argue that this policy will reduce national debt and boost the economy, but the opponents say it's just a way for big corporations and the wealthy to get richer while the poor and middle class suffer. Politicians and those opposed to this policy have been speaking out strongly. They argue that raising taxes on lower-income people is a huge mistake and will only worsen inequality in society. Protests and meetings in Congress have been happening constantly, with harsh criticisms aimed at Trump and his allies. But Trump, of course, isn't backing down. He remains steadfast in defending his tax policy, claiming it's the right move to push the economy forward. This creates a heated showdown between the two sides. One side believes this policy will bring prosperity, while the other believes it will lead to a chaotic future, with injustice and an increase in lawsuits. And of course, while politicians argue, lawyers and law firms are smiling because they know they'll keep making tons of money from these lawsuits. We all know that Trump's tax policy has caused a lot of controversy, but one thing that few people anticipated was the price it would pay in the form of endless lawsuits. That's right, every time Trump announces a new tax policy, it's not just the citizens who are worried about their taxes, but they also have to prepare themselves for a lawsuit. So what do you think when the government introduces a policy that, instead of receiving public support, creates a race between lawyers and citizens to sue the government? And these aren't just small lawsuits. Each one drags on for months, sometimes even years, making people endure both the tax burden and the legal burden. Trump surely didn't expect his tax policy to make people go to court like this. Lower and middle-income earners, who were already struggling with tax increases, now also face an endless legal battle. And instead of enjoying the benefits of this tax policy, they find themselves caught in a complex legal game, where lawyers are earning huge fees from each case. Imagine this, while the poor are paying higher taxes, law firms are thriving, raking in huge fees from these lawsuits. This isn't just a problem for Trump anymore. It's become a case of lawsuit inflation, where every tax change leads to a new lawsuit, and it seems like it will never end. Not only that, but when lawsuits drag on, people face court fees, lawyer fees, and sometimes have to spend thousands of dollars just to fight an unfair tax policy. So the question is, who really wins in this legal battle? The citizens or the lawyers? One thing is for sure, the only people who don't win in these lawsuits are Trump's tax policies. So, after all these lawsuits and the strong public backlash, does Trump feel exhausted? Does he realize that his tax policy has become one of the most complicated issues he's ever faced? Or will he continue on this path and hope everything will be okay? Imagine one day, Trump standing in front of piles of tax paperwork and facing a whole stack of lawsuits. Will he sigh and think, "This isn't what I had in mind when I became president"? While Trump is known for not easily being rattled, even he must feel a bit worn out from this long legal battle. And he might be thinking, "I've done everything I could to help this economy, but why am I facing all these lawsuits?" That surely isn't a pleasant feeling. The truth is, we can see that he's going to have to keep facing criticism from every direction. These endless lawsuits could damage his administration, because they're diverting attention away from other important political goals. So, what will Trump do next? Maybe he'll come up with a legal strategy to fight off these lawsuits. Or he might try to ease up on some of the tax issues to avoid further lawsuits. But whatever happens, this legal battle will continue, and it's not going to end easily. And when it does end, Trump may have to pay a heavy price, not just politically, but financially, and in terms of his reputation. So, is this tax policy worth suing over? This is a question we need to ask ourselves. Trump made big changes to the tax policy hoping to boost the economy, but is this policy truly fair? If you look at the facts, this tax policy just increases inequality in society. Lower and middle-income people end up paying higher taxes, while big corporations and the wealthy get enormous tax breaks. That's a painful truth, and it's this unfairness that sparked a wave of legal action. One clear reality is that this tax policy not only affects low-income groups but could also reduce public trust in the government. When people feel like they're being treated unfairly, they won't hesitate to stand up and demand justice. And when that happens, lawsuits like these will continue to emerge. Will these lawsuits change Trump's tax policy? The answer depends on how the courts will rule. But one thing's for sure, these lawsuits will become a defining part of Trump's political history. If he can't overcome these lawsuits, his tax policy might be delayed or even completely overturned. In the end, one big question remains: does Trump actually care about the poor and middle class, the ones bearing the brunt of this tax policy? Or is he just focused on maintaining the power and benefits of big corporations? The answer to that might be determined in these lawsuits. And whatever the outcome, it will surely have a long-lasting impact on both Trump and the American people who have to endure this policy. So, what do you think about Trump's difficult tax policy? Can he overcome these lawsuits and continue pushing his tax agenda, or will he ultimately have to stop under the pressure of never-ending legal battles? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to keep up with more crazy tax situations. Now, just imagine if you were an American citizen suffering from these high taxes and ongoing lawsuits. Maybe you'd want to head straight to court too. I hope this full translation with expanded content meets your expectations. Let me know if you'd like any further adjustments.